I'm going to be talking to Steve MacDonald, who's the CEO of Emissions Reduction Alberta, about a $30 million project funded by the government of Alberta to do engineering studies about carbon capture and utilization and storage projects in Alberta connected to high emission industries like oil and gas and cement production. So welcome to the interview, Steve.
Great to see you again, Mark, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, sir. Well, look, give us an overview of this project, please.
Sure. The carbon capture kickstart was announced last week with Minister Nixon, and it comes from tier funding. And the $30 million competition is to advance carbon capture at the industrial scale within Alberta. And as you mentioned, Mark, it's focused on feasibility and engineering. So it's not the capital construction, but it's the heavy lifting to get these projects ready for ultimate investment decisions.
Now, carbon capture and storage is considered to be probably the technology that will be used in, I don't know, 50 or 60% of decarbonizing oil and gas. That's what experts are telling me. So it's going to play a big role in reducing GHG emissions in Alberta, helping governments get to their climate targets. What kind of industries are you expecting projects to come from?
Yeah. So any large industrial process that has significant emissions is likely hard to sort of reduce their emissions without carbon capture and storage. Think of the chemical industry, fertilizer, steel, cement, as you mentioned, as well as the oil and gas. So it's a technology that's essential given any pathway to net zero by 2050. Ideally, it's for large emitters because you need a reasonable concentration of CO2 to make the economics of it work. But again, it's not an oil and gas specific solution. It's a technology that all large industrial processes will require to meet the ambitious targets that the world has set in terms of 2030 and 2050.
Well, Steve, I'm kind of curious, will these studies take into account the medium to long-term economic competitiveness of the industries? And I'm thinking here particularly of oil and gas, petrochemicals, maybe not so much, but refineries, certainly. I mean, the International Energy Agency is forecasting peak oil demand in 2030 or close to it, and decline thereafter. And I'm wondering, what happens if CCS infrastructure like pipelines and sequestration fields are developed, and then there's a decline in demand for that product, and you wind up with stranded assets. Does that get considered in this kind of work at all?
Yeah, you've nailed it, Mark. This is really about that heavy lifting to make the business case, to fill knowledge gaps, to drive partnerships, because we're encouraging companies to come together in partnerships to explore technologies and accelerate those final investment decisions. And it really is about creating more certainty around costs and other key design and integration elements that you've described. There's a lot of policy movement out there. We have the federal government considering an investment tax credit. We have the province working on a carbon sequestering hub. There's work around hydrogen. There's a clean fuel standard. So this call will allow industry to start to map out what do the economics look like, what's the expectations in terms of public support, in terms of a price on carbon, and what's the economics in terms of a payback for these significant capital investments.
Well, it's very interesting. What kind of funding exactly is available, amounts and so on, and when are you expecting the awards to be made, studies to be done next year or two, I would imagine?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So in terms of the timing, the competition closes on March 3rd, and we hope to select the most successful projects by early summer. It'll likely be oversubscribed, and the amount of funding available is up to $7.5 million. We expect all our funding to be matched one-to-one by the private sector, so our funding will be at least doubled. The minimum project size would be about a $2 million feasibility study with us providing up to $1 million. We're encouraging partnerships, so that $7.5 million would be available to consortiums of companies that have a sort of a hub model proposal. The other thing I'd add is that it's not just about capture at industrial sites. We're also prepared to look at utility scale or large scale direct air capture, which is an interesting technology. And we're also willing to look at transportation projects that involve the creation of an infrastructure that'll connect multiple sources, because we think that transportation is a critical piece of the value chain.
Steve, I did an interview a couple months ago with Delta Clean Tech from Calgary, and they had sold some of their CCUS technology to China, where it was going to be combined with other technologies. So they captured the CO2, and then Chinese companies would actually make products with the CO2. Is that kind of an arrangement contemplated in this project?
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at the capture element because that's what's most urgent in terms of meeting climate ambitions. But more than just storage in the ground, utilization is a huge market potential, and ERA has funded a number of initiatives in this space. That how do you turn that waste product into valuable assets like nanotubes, carbon fiber, chemicals? So the economic opportunity, not just to maintain our existing industries, but actually create new industries, is immense. And your point about China, the world is moving in this direction around carbon capture. I read something that showed that there's about $35 billion worth of projects approaching FID around the globe right now. So this isn't just an Alberta solution. This is a solution that Canada and the world is exploring. And if Alberta can get back in a leadership role, incredible economic opportunity to export our know-how and technology to the world.
Steve, who are you expecting proposals to come from? What kind of companies or partners?
Yeah, so large file emitters for sure would be the sort of the base partner in one of these projects. But we'll see SMEs apply. We'll see research organizations. This is about feasibility, so there has to be a project and an application available, but the ability for partnerships to emerge and actually take the innovators with the industry and come forward with a proposal are enormous.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for this, and good luck with the project.
Great. Always a pleasure, Mark. Take good care.